Welcome to Curious Roots. I'm your host, Michelle McCrary, writer, community archivist, public researcher, and descendant of the community of Harris Neck, Georgia. You are listening to Season 3 of Curious Roots. If you haven't listened to Seasons 1 and 2, please go check those out on your favorite podcast platform and leave a review while you're there. Thanks for listening. Just 3 years after Isaac Basin Jr. was interviewed about his basket making, his home in Harris Neck, Georgia, was razed to the ground by the federal government in July 1942. In the last episode, we focused on those 3 years before that devastating event. The implications of that destruction affected both human and non-human relatives on the land of Harris Neck. The destruction to Black coastal communities and the very environment they live on continue to be endangered to this day. Now, the destruction comes in the form of golf courses, luxury gated communities, massive distribution warehouses, rising sea levels due to climate change, and now data centers. According to the nonprofit 100 Miles, quote, Georgia is one of only 6 coastal states without a state-level adaptation plan to address sea level rise impacts. What mitigations are in place are not mandatory and are weakened because policymakers and advocates have to manage ideological intolerance around the realities of climate change. For Black coastal communities, the historic disinvestment in infrastructure, especially after storm damage, makes them especially vulnerable to the effects of climate change, end quote. According to a May 2026 story by the Coastal Courier, quote, Effingham County already has around 30 distribution companies of varying sizes operating within the county. Elected lawmakers are now considering adding data centers to that mix. All of that spells disaster for biodiversity, water supply, and forest cover, end quote. In a 2019 interview with South Carolina Public Radio, Nakia Wigfall, a fifth-generation sweetgrass basket maker from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, said overdevelopment has definitely affected the availability of sweetgrass.
For South Carolina Public Radio, I'm Victoria Hanson. Crossing the bridge from Beaufort to the Sea Islands is like drawing back the curtain on a distant land. Beyond the buzz of cars, you can almost hear the quiet. Fish belly flop along the marsh as the sun begins its fiery descent, melting behind billowing tufts of cattails.
My childhood was magical.
Victoria Smalls grew up on St. Helena Island, farming her family's land as one of 14 children.
20 acres, you can run and rip and be barefoot and be carefree.
But that carefree living didn't come easy. The island was home to dozens of plantations where Smalls' ancestors were enslaved. Once freed, they stayed on the remote island, holding on to their African traditions. Their descendants, and others like them, became known as Gullah Geechee.
Gullah Geechee means that you have most of your Africanisms intact, more than any other African American in America.
That includes a distinct language, a mix of Creole and English, allowing slaves to secretly communicate. Smalls was fluent until she left the comfort of her community.
And at about age 9 and 10, I realized they were laughing at the way that I spoke. And I would cry. And I can feel it. I can feel myself welling up right now.
It's hard to imagine that little girl and this confident and insightful 6'4" woman. She works at the island's Penn Center, the nation's first school for freed slaves in the South. Her apartment is adorned with Gullah paintings, some by artists who've become world-renowned.
These images really just show the beautifulness of the people.
She says there's a renewed sense of pride among Gullah people. In fact, their once protected culture has become, well, popular. Just Google Gullah. You'll find music, T-shirts, books, spices, even instant Gullah grits.
We had no idea it would become a double-edged sword.
Marquetta Goodwine, better known as Queen Quet, is the chiefess and head of the Gullah Geechee Nation, protecting its people, preserving their way of life.
So where we would rather not talk to folks, unless we've in the crack we teeth with we family and think on the porch and thing like that or the piazza, but we have to do it.
She says they've had to share their history to keep it accurate, especially as outsiders, people who are not Gullah, try to cash in.
We didn't know that people would now commercialize your culture and further exploit a group of people who are the descendants of Africans who were exploited in the first place.
Commercialism is not the only threat. Queen Quet says so is climate change. Rising sea levels threaten to swallow hallowed Gullah land, already under attack, she says, by developers. So how do you preserve a culture, its people, when the ancestral land they're tied to may be lost? Queen Quet and Victoria Smalls both believe the answer is education, empowering young people.
How else are you going to educate the world about Gullah culture if you don't have some aspects that appear to be commercial?
Smalls says the homegrown Gullah group Ranky Tanky is a good example.
Good time, a good time.
She calls them popular and authentic. She likes to listen to music as she paints. She rubs rich pastel colors into textured paper, shaping peaceful, prayerful Gullah faces.
I almost can hear the people in these paintings almost speaking. I can yeti what they say. I can hear what they say, and it's always in Gullah.
The little girl who lost her language has found a voice.
None of them look like enslaved people.
Proud and strong. On St. Helena Island, I'm Victoria Hansen for South Carolina Public Radio.
Also in 2019, Queen Quet, chiefess of the Gullah Geechee Nation, testified before the United States House of Representatives about the dangers that climate change poses to the cultures of Black coastal communities.
Thank you. I'm the children. I'm so glad to be here this afternoon and things like that. And on behalf of all the Gullah Geechee Nation, the ancestors, and everybody with their own family, we want to thank Congressman Cunningham. We want to thank the chair and all of this subcommittee and things like that. And so, as I just said to you, thank you so much for having me here today. And I said it to you in my native tongue, which is the Gullah language. So many people who have said, well, I never heard that language before, obviously have never been to this land where I'm from. We literally live in the Atlantic Ocean on islands called the Sea Islands, from Jacksonville, North Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida. And you will often hear native Gullah Geechee say, the water will bring me, the water will take me back. And many of you have even sung our songs, the spirituals, that are my South Carolina state music now, where we say that God might trouble the water, wade in the water. And so I'm very happy to be able to bring this flow from the Sea Islands up the hill this time, so that we can sit together and talk about our love of the oceans. Because, of course, for us as Gullah Geechees, the land is our family and the waterways are our bloodline. So it's a great concern and grave concern to us when we find that pollutants, poisons, overbuilding, acidification, erosion, and all of these things are now compounding as elements within the water that's changing the ecology of the water. So as someone that likes to now put the thing up the creek, so we love to eat seafood, and I'm sure all of you who come down there, we all would love to eat some too. We've seen those seafoods changing. We've seen less in certain stocks. We've seen where the catfish no longer flow around St. Helena Island. So as a founding member of the Gullah Geechee Fishing Association, these are the things that made us form as a group to make sure that our voice is heard in the national discussions about what can we do to go ahead and have these tides that are rising lift all of our boats together. We make the battle boat. You might have a yacht, but trust me, If that tide is moving and we all out there, we gonna flow with it or we gonna fight against it.
Interdisciplinary scholar Adrian Cato, whose work focuses on the long legacy of environmental injustice, coastal conservation, and ecological science in the archipelagic region of coastal Georgia, turned an eye to Apalachicola, Florida, to contextualize the harms to our relationship with coastal land and potential paths toward better connection. Apalachicola used to provide nearly 10% of oysters for the entire United States. In a piece called Oyster Futurities, More Than Human Kinship and the Humble Mollusk, written for the Society for Cultural Anthropology, Cato notes, oyster reefs, along with marshes and seagrasses, are considered a part of coastal infrastructure known as living shorelines, fostered to prevent coastal erosion and limit storm surge from the certainty of intensifying storms in coastal futures. Oysters are inextricably tied to the foodways of Black coastal communities, a lineage that directly connects to shellfishing traditions in West Africa. The decline of oysters in Apalachicola began when Black oyster tongers were discriminated against and barred from employment. This targeted discrimination was paired with the rise of the harmful method of dredging oysters. By the end of this article, Cato moves into a profound line of questioning where she states, "The American Atlantic coastline remains a site where we can critically understand Black geographies, recentering the oyster as part of the coastal infrastructure needed to address the conditions of climate change created by settler colonialism and racial capitalism indeed feels like a natural regression towards an organism that has already been a part of Black and Indigenous survival." What might it mean to create living shorelines that are also acts of living history? Like sweetgrass, oysters are a part of the coastal ecosystems and infrastructure that Black coastal communities have been in relationship with since their kidnapping and trafficking to these same shores. The destruction of these coastlines and the destruction of Black coastal communities go hand in hand. Land, people, and culture are all connected. All bodies of culture, on some cellular level, know this. If we turn our energies toward restoring these relationships and repairing these connections, as Queen Quet said in her testimony, all boats rise. We all benefit. Learn more about Black coastal communities from North Carolina to Florida at GullahGeecheeCorridor.org. Find out how you can support the land return efforts at Harrisneck at harrisnecklandtrust.org. For even more resources about Black coastal communities, check out CuriousRootsPod.com and follow us at CuriousRootPod on Instagram. Curious Roots is executive produced by me, Michelle McCrary, for Moonshadow Productions and Day Clean Communications. Music and additional co-production is by Juan Pablo Piedrahita.